Welcome to Silver Living Hub. Buckle up, because today I'm taking you along on a wild little ride, one that involves a 62-year-old mom, a plane ticket, and a harebrained scheme to surprise my son Michael across 2,500 miles without him suspecting a thing. I dubbed it Operation Surprise Michael. And trust me, it's not your typical retirement hobby. I'm the kind of person who thrives on plans. Grocery lists, watering the geraniums, you name it, I've got it mapped out. But this was me stepping way out of my comfort zone, plotting a secret trip from my quiet little house in Oregon to Michael's place in Chicago. If you've ever sat in your kitchen staring at a photo of your grown-up kid, wondering what their life looks like beyond those quick "I'm fine, Mom" texts, then you'll get why I did this. It's not some superhero mom tale. I was nervous, I fumbled, and I nearly lost my suitcase at the airport. But it's about how a little careful plotting turned missing my son into one of the best moments of my life. Michael's 36 now, a busy engineer in Chicago, 2,500 miles from me and my creaky porch swing in Oregon. We'd gone 5 years without seeing each other face to face, just surviving on phone calls that barely scratched the surface. I decided enough was enough. I'd fly out, knock on his door, and catch him off guard. But here's the kicker. I wasn't about to wing it and risk disaster. I'll walk you through the whole adventure, from the crazy idea popping into my head, the hilarious prep sessions that nearly ended in chaos, to the second I stood on his doorstep, heart pounding like a drum. Stick around, and you'll see that a surprise visit doesn't have to be a leap into the unknown. It's a leap with a safety net, built from love and a touch of sneaky planning. Ready to hop on this flight with me? Let's go! It all kicked off on a rainy Saturday afternoon in Oregon, the kind of day where the drizzle taps the roof and you're stuck inside with nothing but your thoughts. I was dusting the living room shelves, my go-to boredom buster, when I picked up a framed photo of Michael from his college graduation. There he was, all decked out in his cap and gown, grinning like he'd just won the lottery, with me hugging him tight, eyes puffy from happy tears. I wiped the dust off the glass, and suddenly, this wave of heaviness hit me. 5 years, 5 whole years since I'd last seen him in person. Sure, I'd flown to Chicago for his wedding, given him a quick squeeze at the airport, and headed back home. But that was it. Since then, we'd been coasting on short calls. "How's work?" "Busy, Mom, you okay?" Like we were polite acquaintances, not mother and son. I carried the photo to the kitchen, plopped it on the counter, and started brewing a pot of coffee. Decaf because my nerves were already buzzing. As the machine gurgled, I kept thinking about Michael. I missed the way he'd hum off key while doing dishes, the smell of his burnt toast experiments on Sunday mornings. What was his life like now? Did he still burn toast, or had Laura, his wife, taught him better? I knew he was an engineer, had a dog named Rusty, but that was about it. Little snippets, not the full picture. The coffee finished brewing, but I didn't pour it. I just stood there, staring at the pot, feeling this itch I couldn't scratch. I thought, if I don't see him soon, when will I? When I'm 80 and can't climb the plane stairs. That's when the idea hit me like a lightning bolt. I'd fly to Chicago and surprise him. No warning, just show up at his door. But as soon as the thought landed, my practical side kicked in. Are you nuts, Susan? You're 62, flying halfway across the country unannounced. What if he's not even home? I laughed out loud, picturing myself stranded on his porch with my suitcase, looking like a lost tourist. Still, the idea wouldn't let go. It clung to me like wet socks after a puddle. I grabbed a notepad from the junk drawer, the one I use for grocery lists, and started scribbling. "Operation Surprise Michael," I wrote at the top, grinning like a kid plotting a prank. I wanted it to be a shock, but not a train wreck. I'd make it a surprise with a plan. First things first, timing. Michael had mentioned once that November was his slow season. Big projects wrapped up, a chance to breathe. But I wasn't taking chances. I picked up the phone and called Laura, his wife, playing it cool as a cucumber. "Hey, Laura, how's Michael holding up with work?" I asked, stirring my cold coffee like it was a casual chat. Oh, he's good. Finally done with that monster project, she said. You doing okay out there? Yep, just missing you guys, I replied, keeping my poker face through the phone. She didn't suspect a thing. Perfect. I jotted down November 25th, post-Thanksgiving, prime time for a drop-in when he'd likely be home, feet up, no crazy work trips. I flipped open my laptop, hands shaky from excitement, and hunted for flights. Portland to Chicago. It took me 3 tries to get the dates right. I almost booked a trip to Florida instead, but I snagged a ticket, muttering, "Here we go, Susan. No turning back now." With the ticket booked, I dove into prep mode, and let me tell you, it was a mix of spy-level scheming and sitcom-worthy blunders. I sat at my kitchen table, notepad in hand, coffee mug now cold as ice, and told myself, this has to be a surprise, but it can't be a mess. Plan it like your life depends on it. I imagined Michael opening his door, jaw dropping. But what if he panicked? What if he was out of town? I needed a way to soften the landing without spilling the beans. So I hatched a sneaky little move. I'd send him a letter, vague enough to keep him guessing. I dug out some fancy stationery from the hall closet, left over from Christmas cards I never sent, and grabbed my trusty pen. Dear Michael, I wrote, I've been missing you something fierce. I've got some stories to share end of this month. Hope you're around. No hint of planes or suitcases, just enough to nudge him into keeping his schedule light. I mailed it off, chuckling. Gotcha, kid. I'm smarter than I look. Next up, a gift. I couldn't show up empty-handed. That's not my style. Michael's always been crazy about my oatmeal raisin cookies, the ones he'd sneak from the jar as a kid, crumbs all over his shirt. I hauled out my mixing bowls, turned on the radio, some oldies station playing Elvis, and got to work. Disaster struck on batch 1. I forgot the sugar, and they tasted like cardboard. Well, that's a no-go, I grumbled, tossing them in the trash while the smoke alarm chirped like a cranky bird. Batch 2 was a winner, golden, chewy, just like he loved. I baked 3 dozen, packed them in a tin with a note. Your old favorite, don't eat 'em all at once. I also grabbed a photo album from the attic, pictures of him as a toddler on a tricycle, us at the Grand Canyon, his high school prom with that awful tux. We'll flip through this, I thought, and laugh about the good old days. My suitcase started filling up. Cookies, album, a thick sweater, because Chicago in November. Brr, I wasn't about to freeze my tail off on his doorstep. Then came prepping myself. 62 isn't exactly spring chicken territory, and a cross-country trip takes some grit. I visited my doctor, who checked me over. Blood pressure's fine, Susan, but take your meds and don't overdo it. I nodded, thinking, overdo it? I'm too nervous to sleep. To get ready, I started walking laps around the neighborhood, 15 minutes a day, huffing past the maple trees, daydreaming about Michael's face so much I tripped over a curb and nearly face-planted. Focus, Susan, I scolded myself, brushing off my knees. I pulled up Chicago maps on my laptop. His house was in a suburb near a little park, about 40 minutes from O'Hare by cab. I double-checked with Laura, casual as ever. Michael got any big plans end of November? Nope, just chillin', she said. I hung up, grinning. Operation Surprise Michael was rolling like a well-oiled machine. The day before the flight, I added a curveball. I called my old friend Betty, who lives an hour from Chicago. Betty, I'm pulling a stunt, flying to surprise Michael. Back me up if I need a crash spot. She cackled. Susan, you're a riot. I'm in. That was my safety net. If things went haywire, I'd have a place to regroup. Flight day rolled in, and I stood at Portland International, suitcase wobbling behind me, heart doing somersaults. I wore my favorite navy coat and a scarf Michael gave me years ago. Frayed, but it felt like a piece of him. The flight was 6 hours. I sat by the window, watching clouds roll by, picturing his stunned face. I whispered to myself, he'd better be happy or I'm eating all these cookies myself. We landed at O'Hare at 4 p.m., wind whipping, sky gray as steel. I hopped in a cab, gave the driver Michael's address, and clutched the cookie tin like it was gold. nerves jangling like loose change. The cab pulled up to Michael's place, a cute 2-story brick house with white shutters and a snow-dusted lawn. I climbed out, dragging my suitcase, breath puffing out in little clouds. The street was dead quiet, just a stray squirrel darting across, a few icicles glinting on the eaves. I adjusted my scarf, took a deep breath, "Here goes nothing, Susan," and shuffled up the steps. My hand shook as I pressed the doorbell, a sharp ding-dong that echoed in my chest. Footsteps thumped inside, and the door swung open. There was Michael in a rumpled sweatshirt, holding a mug, hair sticking up like he'd just rolled out of bed. His eyes bugged out. "Mom, how are you here?" I grinned, tears prickling. "Surprise, kiddo. Thought I'd drop by." He froze, mug tilting dangerously, then dropped it on the hall table and tackled me in a bear hug. Nearly knocked the cookie tin out of my hands. I hugged back, feeling his warmth, the faint whiff of coffee on him, just like home. "You scared the daylights out of me," he said, voice cracking, then yanked me inside. Laura poked her head out from the kitchen, spatula in hand, and burst out laughing. "Susan, you're insane. I knew something was up, but not this." I shot back. "Had to see my boy. Couldn't wait another minute." Michael grabbed my suitcase, still shaking his head. "You flew from Oregon without a word. I'm speechless." We piled onto the living room couch, cozy, with a fireplace crackling, and Rusty the dog sniffing my shoes. I pulled out the cookie tin. "Made your oatmeal raisins. Don't say I never spoil you." Michael popped it open, eyes lighting up. "No way. These are the best. Laura, try one. Mom's a legend." He munched one, crumbs falling, and Laura brought out tea, steaming mugs that warmed my chilly hands. We sat there, swapping stories. I told them about the burnt batch and my curb tumble. Michael recounted how he'd flooded the kitchen trying to fix the sink last week. Laura chimed in, "He's hopeless. Good thing you're here to save us." We laughed until my sides ached, the 5-year gap melting away like snow in spring. Later, I handed him the photo album. We scooted closer on the couch, flipping pages, him on a tricycle, us at his first baseball game, prom night with that hideous bow tie. He pointed at one, chuckling. "Remember this?" "I spilled juice all over your dress at Grandma's." I nodded. "Oh, I was mad, but I couldn't stop laughing." We stayed up past midnight, Rusty curled at our feet, reminiscing until my voice got hoarse. Michael set me up on the couch with a pile of blankets. "No way you're taking my room, Mom." And I drifted off, hearing him and Laura murmur in the hall, thinking, "Mission accomplished, Susan. You nailed it." The next morning, Michael brewed coffee, black, just like I taught him, and Laura whipped up pancakes, the kitchen smelling like a diner. We ate, joked, and he said, "Mom, this was nuts but amazing. I'm calling you more, promise." I stayed 3 days, walked the park with him, cooked my famous chili with Laura, left with a long hug at O'Hare. He waved. "Next time, I'm coming to Oregon." That trip wasn't just a visit, it stitched us back together. Here's what I learned. That letter? Genius. Kept him curious without blowing it. Timing it post-project meant he was free, not frazzled. Cookies and the album broke the ice. We had stuff to dive into. Prep, doctor, walks. Betty's backup kept me steady. My pal Dorothy did it too. Drove to Denver with homemade jam for her daughter. Caught her mid-yoga class. Jim, my neighbor, took a train to Philly with his old fishing lures. His son loved it. Plan it, and it works. Want to try? Pick a quiet time, ask around to confirm. Drop a hint, letter, text, without spilling. Bring something personal, food, photos. Prep yourself, health, rote. Be you when you arrive. Hug big, laugh loud. Michael calls weekly now. We're tighter than ever. Got a surprise story? Drop it below. I'm all ears. Silver living hubs about keeping family close, however far they roam. Like this? Subscribe. More adventures ahead. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.